It's been over 3 years since I first played Chivalry 2, and I know much of the community, like myself, we're just beginning to look forward to the next entry into the medieval slasher genre. I think when the devs announce a lack of future support, it's only natural to start wondering what is next, right? We all want to always look towards the horizon and see into the future. Now, ideally for me, we would get a Mordhau 2 over the next year or two and kind of alternate between big name releases in the genre. However, the Mordhau developers have confirmed that Mordhau 2 is not in development, so it looks like we're going to wait for Chivalry 3, which the developers have strongly hinted is going to be coming in the next several years, and they said it's going to be epic. And even though there will be multiple indie slasher releases before then, what excites me the most about Chivalry 3 is this is the first time in our genre, in the slasher genre's history, that a game like this is going to be made with a very large team of developers. I mean, Torn Banner Studios, it's now over 100 devs strong, and in theory, and we say that with quotes around it, in theory, right? More hands on deck, it should lead to a higher quality game than we've seen in the genre before. Like, yeah, it should get more features, you should get more systems, and you should get more game modes. A lot of time in indie development, the developers, they wear multiple hats, right? You can't just be an expert at one thing when five people are making a game. You have to take on a lot of responsibility. Now you can hire people who are really specialists at what they do, and they work on perfecting that one system. Now, of course, this is not always true. I mean, Ubisoft is as big of a company as they get in gaming, and that company just releases garbage game after garbage game, and they still somehow are in business and sell. But in theory, Chivalry 3, it should be the best game we get in the genre. And with big teams comes big features. And I want to talk about a feature or a system that I really think it's the next step for the genre and something that we really need included in Chivalry 3 in some form. And that's a move to a more physics based game or physics based systems implemented into the game. And now, before I tell you guys why and how they should implement physics into Chivalry, if you enjoy the video, subscribe to the channel because there are just a ton of medieval games coming out over the next few months, and I'm going to be covering a lot of them. So I've crawled into the rabbit hole over the last few months of these physics-based combat games, and the trailer from Kinstrife is what really got me interested in it. It's a fully physics-based medieval game, kind of like Bannerlord, but again, the kind of thing to it is that every interaction in the game is based on physics, and that got me interested. And then I played We Who Are About to Die, the Gladiator game, and I've added Ex Anima to my playlist, and I plan on playing that really soon. I've heard such great things about that. However, the game that really got me into the physics based combat game and that I've dived into the most is Half Sword. And now my initial impressions of that game were that it's ridiculous, right? It's just complete funny stupidity. I had no idea what I was doing. I just basically flailed around like a total idiot, and I was just laughing hysterical at the blood spraying everywhere. It was a lot of fun, but I didn't think there was much to the game. I didn't think there was any longevity to that game. But as I played it more, I watched some YouTube videos and I familiarized myself with the gameplay systems and got better at controlling my mouse into it. I learned that the genre and the game is actually extremely complex and there's a very high skill ceiling to it. And what I like about physics games is they don't guarantee outcomes, right? There's not like some script running in the background that if A and B happens, C is going to always happen, right? There's so many variables. You could play the game for 100 hours and you're still going to see things you've never seen before in the game. They just happen kind of organically. And I think physics are the future of gaming. I think a lot of games are slowly starting to roll out more physics-based systems. I think you're going to see a lot of that over the next decade. And I know you guys who've played Half Sword, you guys want to yell at me right now because I'm trying to turn Chivalry into Half Sword, but I'm not at all, right? I would be firmly against going to a full mouse control system like Half Sword is currently, or even implementing that level of physics into the game. But there are games like NBA 2K or FIFA, which I know the sports games, but I think how they implement their physics into the game in certain instances, that could be something we could use as an example for how to get this stuff into Chivalry 2. Like example, in NBA 2K, when you drive to the basket and there's going to be contact, there's going to be foul, someone's going to go up to try to contest your shot, your player models are going to interact. And with the physics in the game, those interactions are different every time. So you could drive to the basket 100 times and see similar animations, but then on the 101st time you drive, you see something that you have never seen before. And I think that's what keeps games so fresh. FIFA, the same thing. They added physics to the ball. It was a little wonky in the first iteration, but rather than being scripted like in the early 2000s, like if you hit this part of the post at this speed, the ball will go exactly here. With the physics base, there's more interactions and there's more possibilities depending on where you hit the ball, where the ball hits the post, where it hits a player, the speed. Like there, it just makes a lot more variability to the game, and you have a lot more random things happen for good or bad. Even RPG games, they've started adding physics to things like the cloth or the robes of characters so that if you brush into an object, it'll react in a realistic way. And this can be different every time. And a lot of people probably won't even realize this is in their game, but I think it's one of those subtle things that maybe subconsciously you don't realize is happening, but your mind knows it's happening, and it just makes the game feel a little bit different for you. And I think adding physics-based systems to a game like Chivalry will add for the longevity of the game, because I like to remember we had Mordhau moments or Chivalry moments where just something crazy happens, like a one-legged dwarf beats you with a harp to death, and it's just, you remember it forever. I think adding more ways for crazy interactions to happen would make Chivalry more replayability. So let me give you guys a few examples of how I think physics could be added to our genre. When Chivalry 3 releases, expect horses to be a core part of the game. They were supposed to be a launch feature in Chivalry 2, but the developers, they couldn't get them to work on last-gen consoles in 64-player team objective mode, and I would expect them to try extremely hard to right that wrong for Chivalry 3, right? Expect horses whether you want them or not. And now, if you've played the horse modes, you know if you get run over by a horse, you just kind of get knocked down. Nothing really special about it. You just go flat on your back, you get up, and that's it. But what if the horses and the players, they had interactions that were defined by physics-based systems? Say you run a footman over at full speed, but you only clipped his shoulder. The physics determines rather than getting knocked on his butt, he should go flying to the side. Unfortunately, two of his teammates are standing right next to him. His momentum, it now knocks down both of his teammates, and you have just kind of a pile or a clusterfuck in the middle of the battlefield. Just think of like the chaos that can happen when a random footman gets launched into the melee, knocking over players for both teams. The possibilities of unique interactions here and just crazy moments are endless. And now, how about those instances where a horrible horse driver, and I know we've all been there, I'm terrible at driving the horses, or riding the horses, not driving, right? Riding the horses. Well, what if a rider runs full on into a wall? In Chivalry 2, you just kind of ignore the collision, you turn the horse around, and you try again. But what if you hit a barrier at full speed in a physics-based system? You should be launched from your horse, or your horse should even trip and fall down. There should be some sort of interaction showing that this happened. Now, just imagine, this to me would be absolutely epic. If you're a footman, you're fighting at the walls, the castle of Rodhelm, you're in defense, you're trying your best, and a horse, a cavalry guy is running at you or riding at you full speed, and you hit that dodge button at the side. That rider goes full speed into the castle. They should go splat like a bug, right? Like swatting a fly. Like there should be gore, body parts, things everywhere, blood everywhere, and it would be insane. How cool and how amazing would it feel if something like that was in Chivalry 2? To me, it sounds epic. I think it would make for great TikTok or YouTube clips, even to sell people on the game. And I think this physics-based system, it would work wonders if you added more physics to things like tackling too. And now, personally, I consider tackling to be a waste of time 99% of the time. It's easy to block. If you see it coming, you can just kind of time an attack from the proper distance. Or if you don't have the proper distance, you just hold block and the tackle is done, right? No harm, no foul. And most of the time, I actually get tackled, like someone lands on a tackle for me, whether they got it from the side or from my back, out of my viewpoint in first person. I wind up kind of getting caught in the melee, and I just stand up anyway without actually ever getting hit. Sometimes it's almost like they gave me a free pass, because if they just heavy attacked me in the back, I would have taken damage. So that's why I'm kind of anti-tackling the game. I just don't think it's really worth the reward. But now, say you added some physics space to the interactions of the players and to tackling. I think this would be a way to make tackling more rewarding, knowing that if you tackle one enemy, the physics of his body could crash into his teammates and you could knock them down. Also, say you knock someone down on like a hill, right? Maybe they roll down the hill and like a bowling pin knocked down a bunch of your teammates, right? Like one of those logs in you see in the movies, they drop the logs down and then bodies go flying everywhere. What if you could have interactions like that? And I mentioned bowling pins, same thing. What if you land that hero tackle behind a group of the whole enemy team and they just all one into the other like bowling pins? I feel like the playmaking potential of adding these physics-based systems could be so cool. I mean, obviously you'd have to balance it and tone it down to some extent so it wasn't game breaking where it just turned into which team tackles better, but I feel like there are possibilities if you add this stuff to make unique interactions that would make every single game you play feel completely different. And I think that's what we're going for here with physics and gaming is if you use it smart, it should put systems into the game that make every single time you play feel a little bit different. And it just increases those epic moments for engagement. And I think that's what keeps people coming back for more. I don't think there's ever been a person who started playing Chivalry or Mordhau and says they didn't have a good time. I think what happens though is after you kind of see things for a little bit, you have to determine if you like the combat and that type of gameplay enough to stay. But if there were more things to see, I think people would stick around for longer and it increases the longevity of the game. And I really want to envision some sort of like physics to the blades. Now, I'm not a developer, so it's tough for me to come up with something on this. But I think Hellish Court does a wonderful job. If you guys have played that, the fencing, the Hema game, great game. But they have physics in the blades interactions, and they're not over the top like half sword. I think some sort of mild physics between the blades would be pretty cool, just again to change up how things look for the players. Now, I do have worries that maybe this could lead to less player control if the interactions are a little bit more random, like say you just happen to clip each other's right on the tip, right? You nip the tip and then swords go flying everywhere. That would probably be good for the game. And the best players, they want to have a certainty to their movements. They know what they're doing, right? And they do everything very calculating. So if the game had more randomness, that wouldn't be good. But I think there's a way of adding some stuff that would make things be a little less predictable while not hurting the skill ceiling of the game. But that's something that the devs would have to do because I have no coding experience. But I really want to hear from you guys about this idea. Like, how would you guys think implementing physics into a slasher game? How could it be done? What ideas could you guys come up with that we could send over to the devs? Or do you think it's just a waste of time and I'm completely out of my mind? Let me know down below. Champ out.